Over the years, many fans of PS1 games have made their own games in a similar style to them. Though they often aren't playable on the PlayStation 1, they still attempt to emulate that feeling PS1 games give you. Specifically, horror is a genre that seems to really be thriving under that style, often listed as haunted PSX games. Since I just came off playing a bunch of PlayStation 1 games, I figured why not try some? So I went to itch.io, which is a great place to find indie games, and I just grabbed a handful. There's a ton of games, enough that it would take me forever to play them all, so I grabbed like 25 that stood out to me. I tried to grab variety, but most of these games are going to be horror-based, as that seems to be the biggest genre when it comes to these PSX-style games. I'm going to play a bit of each game, play through all of it if I want, but I don't have to, and then talk about each one. I'm also not being super picky. If it looks like it could be a 90s PC game, or a Dreamcast, or an N64 game, I'm still counting it. Well, maybe not a Dreamcast. It's more about the era and the graphics than it is about whether it looks if it belongs exactly on the PS1. And then at the end, I will pick my top 10 favorite of the handful of games I played. First up, we got Alisa. At least that's how I believe it's spelled. It's A-L-I-S-A. I grabbed the demo as the full game was $9.99, so I wanted to check it out first. So first off, I love how it looks. Second, it has full voice acting, so that's really cool. And third off, this is a Resident Evil clone, and honestly a really damn good one. It even has nods to Resident Evil, like the way you see the first enemy. It is a survival horror game, like Resident Evil, and it plays just like that, which isn't a bad thing. It's just not my kind of game. That being said, if this is your kind of game, you gotta fucking play this. It's fantastic. The enemies are legitimately scary. I think I like the designs far more than, like, the zombies of Resident Evil. And I died in a super claustrophobic way, too. The game is really good for sure, and for sure worth that $9.99 if this is your genre. Baldi's Basics is emulating 90s PC games, specifically ones like Sonic Schoolhouse. It's a horror game about collecting things, escaping the school, and running away from Baldi, who wants to beat your ass. Honestly, it's pretty scary as you're being chased throughout. I have a video on it and what makes it so scary, if you want to check that out. Next we got Bloodborne PSX. It's a demake of Bloodborne. A demake is when you take a current day game and you make it look worse. Now, I've never played Bloodborne, so I don't know how close this is, but I can tell you I really enjoyed the aesthetic of the game. Reminded me a lot of Nightmare Creatures. I for sure enjoyed it, but it was a bit laggy, which I'm going to blame on my computer. Enemies look great. Honestly, so far all these games have been good. Next up we got Bob's Balloons. Bob's Balloons also has voice acting, although the voice is way too dramatic for the vibe.
Already here. Please enjoy the festivities. What do you want from me?
Like, I get he's supposed to be scared, but like, it's too much for that moment. Gameplay-wise, you are walking and collecting things to escape, while balloons want to turn you into a balloon. The game frame rate was bad, but again, I'm blaming that on my PC for now, because I do need a new PC. It was fine, but really didn't stand out to me. Courage the Cowardly Dog. I was so excited for it, but it ran like ass, so I couldn't play it because it was running so poorly, but I will say they fucking nailed the visuals. Doghouse is a game where you gather materials to build a doghouse. There are 3 endings, and the game really isn't very fun. On top of that, I got all 3 endings in like 10 minutes, so I finished that game super quick. Dream Disc is an attempt at a LSD simulator clone. They actually have a thing called LSD Jam, in which games are made in that style. And for those who don't know, LSD Dream Emulator is a walking simulator where you explore dreams. It wasn't popular on release, but became a cult classic much later on. My first video was me and Ashley playing it, so you can watch that on my channel. Anyway, Dream Disc does a really good job. Textures look great, the game feels very dreamlike, it's solid. My biggest issue with it is it's too short. It loops after the 5th room, and I just wish there was more, because I finished the game in like 10 minutes. But hey, I get it. I tried to make a game and never finished it, so props for it even being released. Dying of thirst? Have you ever been afraid to walk around your home late at night to go get a drink? Well, this is a game about that. Personally, as a dry-mouth diabetic, if I'm running to the fridge for a drink and something's in my way, it better move if it wants to live, because I am the thirsty boy. So yeah, couldn't relate to this one. Escape from PSX Hagrid. I was super excited for it because I just played those PlayStation 1 Harry Potter games, and it was alright in terms of character models. I just didn't like how the game looked, and sadly it wasn't for me. Gregor, or perhaps it's called Gregory? I don't know, it's spelled Gregore. The game is a stealth game and handled really well. It also had some very interesting boss fights. And I know it looks super laggy, but it wasn't. Something must have happened in recording because the game was smooth as butter. And honestly wasn't bad. Guests is a walking simulator where you talk to guests in the home. That's honestly about it. It's horror, but it's also kind of silly. Now is a good time to talk about these games. PSX games were bad graphically, but they were doing their best to look good, right? But these games could be done good, but they're doing their best to look bad, right? And I think there's a fine line of imitating this. Like, some look perfect, as if they really were made on the PlayStation. But some either look a little bit too good, or often too bad. And this one here is a good example where it's just too pixely. The PlayStation 1 would attempt to hide it better, even if it still looked pixely. Many of the games we looked at pulled it off great, but this one just doesn't quite hit it for me. M-Stain is great. It's a game where you have a job interview with an evil man named M-Stain, and things get crazy as a lot of stuff happens leading to a final fight with M-Stain. The graphics and charm are wonderful. And what does M-Stain stand for? Anyway, the game is like half an hour. Lots of work went into it for sure, and it is definitely worth a play. Moe's Body Shop is another game that misses the mark for me in terms of visual. The game looks pixely enough without this gross spotty filter on it. Most of the game is just walking or pressing E to interact with an object, which isn't bad, except for what you are seeing isn't too interesting. I played a little over 10 minutes, and the whole time the game either looked like this or like this. It wasn't even scary, just kind of ugly and boring. Next we have Museum of FPS. This game is about a museum of first-person shooters. In the middle of the room is a talking rocket launcher that wants to kill everyone. Your goal is to get the equipment for the gun without the guards catching you. It's a neat idea, and it's executed well. I like how it looks. It's short, but it's a fun experience. Night of the Consumers is a horror game in which you play a retail employee who has to restock shelves or else your boss will be mad, but also customers need help and they're impatient and they will also get mad. If your boss or the customers get mad, you lose. It's straight up psychological terror. I lived this life for 4 years and I don't miss it one bit. Most horror games do not get to me, but this one has my heart throbbing. I have a video discussing the horror of it. Because of course I do. Nico Yume is a LSD Dream Emulator clone, and honestly a really good one. It's such a love letter to LSD Dream Emulator, but also it isn't quite as good. It focuses on cats mainly, which is fine. I'd describe it as LSD Dream Emulator if the guy writing in the Dream Journal was obsessed with cats and only cats. While it is impressive and good, the spooky and weird feeling LSD Dream Emulator gives you is gone. Whereas you never knew what you were going to see in that game, in Nico Yume, you know it's gonna be cats. Sure, it's gonna be weird cats, but it's just cats. OK Normal is a maze-like game of collecting things in a vaporwave-like world. The game starts off innocent enough with you collecting your medicine, but it gets real dark real fast. I've beaten it a few times and I gotta say, it's really good. I don't know another game like it. At one point it says your name, which it learned from the computer, which is cool, but imagine if I had my computer programmed to think my name was like Work Computer 2 or something. It would really take away like the shock of that moment. Overall, gameplay is super basic. It's the aesthetic and dive into darkness you stick around for, but make sure you're in the right headspace for it. Penance is sort of like Doom or Quake, but obnoxiously red and not nearly as good. The game handled fine, but the music and visuals just hurt to look at, and I couldn't tell enemies from power-ups sometimes. Siren Head is sort of like Slender Man. You gotta collect papers in the woods, but like Siren Head is fucking scary and makes siren noises. It's alright, but pretty bare bones. Speaking of bare bones, Speed Faster. I don't think this even counts as a game. This is supposed to be a racing game, but what you see here is the whole game. It's beyond an unfinished project. Tasty Ramen has the coolest fucking little shop. It's so cute. But yet there's horror elements and creepy shit too. This is a great experience. You mainly collect batteries and run away from a bowl of ramen that wants to kill you. But still an absolutely gorgeous game. The Salvation Project is a game I had to play all the way through. I was hooked. It's about being a gullible, religious, paranoid parent who listens to everything a talking frog says. You're afraid of demons who may or may not be real, but in your mind, they are. So you do everything the talking Christian frog tells you to do to keep your home safe from anything secular or satanic. So basically, my parents. The bizarre paranoia goes even further as they literally see the frog telling them about demons in their own house. Do they actually see it, or are they just like really wrapped up in the 90s satanic panic? It's a cool premise, and it's done really well with a lot of voice acting lines. The Smiling Man is a walking simulator about walking in the dark, and sometimes seeing a smiling man who chases you. That's about it. Very game. They Come from the Abyss. This game has such a cool art style. It's mainly just walking and talking, but the art is top-notch nightmare feel. Welcome is spelled without an E, so it's welcome. It's a walking simulator where you explore a few areas the developer made for you. That's kinda it. Unsure if this counts as an LSD Dream Emulator clone or not. It's more of a collection of unrelated rooms the developer just made. The first room is Boring Hills. The second one is cool and reminds me of the intro to Persona. I like it a lot, but it is empty. The third and fourth has the most content, having creepy people. But like, that's kind of it. Alright, well, a lot of those were for sure worth a play, but let me quickly pick my top 10 that I recommend, and if I do a part 2, I'll wait till I get a better computer that can run games better. Make sure to like and subscribe, and here we go. Alright, so here we got our 25 items and our folder of no's. I'm going to throw away the no's until we only have, it would be 11 items because of the folder. So here we go. That'll stay, that'll stay, that'll stay. Let's put that in there. Sadly, I couldn't play that one. No. 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 Sure. No. Sure. No. Sure. 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 No. No. Yeah. Yeah. No. And no. Well, these are with 14 items, so we need to get rid of 3. So let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of, I think, Siren Head and Gregor. Alright, so at number 10 we have the Museum of FPS. At number 9 we have Nico Yume. At number 8 we have Tasty Ramen. At number 7 we have Bloodborne PSX. At number 6 we have M Stain. At number 5 we have OK Normal. At number 4 we have The Salvation Project. At number 3 we have Baldi's Basics. At number 2 we have Alyssa. And at number 1 we have Night of the Consumers. I recommend all these games.